I would love to talk more about how would a more widespread gardening impact the kind of the health of our planet. And I know you talk a lot about that in your work about kind of the environment and climate change. How can everybody doing their part impact climate change and the planet positively?
It's, I love your questions. You're nailing them so much because, like, what and this is like for me as a person, why I'm doing all this is because I want to create a planet, an environment that we can still leave behind for many generations to come.
Yes.
That's actually why I started working in this field and why I started teaching people about this, because as it turns out, and this is the beauty of it, when you do it in a way that is better for your personal health, that is better for you to maintain, so it becomes easier, and there's a
Mm,
bunch of other benefits. As it turns out, it's also better for the environment because you're getting rid of the chemicals that
yeah.
offset all the greenhouse gases, and you're tapping into a more system, an ecological system, how nature works. And
Mm,
as a side effect, as you're doing that, you're doing more photosynthesis, so you're actually sequestering carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into your garden, and you're
yeah.
helping Mother Nature, our planet, a hand to sustain itself. So, and then there's other benefits of like water is becoming an increasing issue, especially where you are
Mm,
in Austin and Texas. Well,
yeah,
if we
absolutely.
do, and it's part of the climate challenge that we're faced, like how are we going to grow food with limited water? Well, if you use these techniques, the plants have way deeper roots. The
Mm,
soil becomes like a sponge. That's what I tell people when you do gardening, regenerative gardening. Your soil becomes like a sponge, and the qualities of a sponge is that when you have like a dry sponge, you can try it when you're home. When you put it under the sink and you start letting water run into it, when it's dry, it will soak up all of the water, and it will hold
yeah.
on to all of the water until it's saturated. So when it's
Yeah.
separated, it drains the water. So these are two qualities that we want to have with soils, because it's one of the
Yeah.
biggest problems that we have now, that we're seeing flash floods coming everywhere, huge
Mhm.
quantities of water, and the soil cannot absorb it because it's not in a
That's
good
so true,
condition.
yeah.
So when
Wow.
you're doing that in your own garden, it becomes a sponge. So even when there's a flash flood, it can drain into the soil and hold on to it for a way longer period. And then when it's dry, it has that water holding capacity. So that benefits you as well and the environment. It also starts feeding the groundwater table, because of all the flash floods that we have, far too much fresh water is running back into the rivers, into the ocean. It's not getting
Okay.
absorbed into the soil, which makes the problem even worse and worse. And in that way, your own garden can like be part of that solution.
Wow, that's amazing. And I want to touch on now because we've talked about soil a couple of times. So you mentioned that nowadays that if I went to Home Depot or whatever the gardening store, I wanted a big old bag of soil to plant a little gardening bed or whatever it may be. Are you telling me that I can't rely on any of those bags? I have to how would I be able to identify what ones wouldn't have damaging chemicals?
Well, I would say it needs a bit of research. I can't say that for your local Home Depot, but honestly, most of the compost that you buy them in bags, they're not necessarily bad, but they're also not good. They're just like a growing
Oh,
medium,
okay.
and some of them they will have chemicals in them. So I wouldn't rely on that. Like I even sometimes we still use it in our projects, but we're shifting in our local projects. We're shifting that, and again, the way we do that, and I think that's something beautiful as well. Farmers are struggling across the world, right? Even my own
Mhm.
family, like we're changing our farm, we're getting into a new direction, and it's starting to get better because we're doing lots of events. We're growing our own food. We have like really cool stuff happening on
Okay.
the farm. But most farmers are really struggling. Like climate change is becoming harder. The public opinion wants people to farm more organically, and they're already
Mm.
struggling, and it's hard for them. So what I suggest is that instead of going to the Home Depot, go to that regenerative farmer and ask him about
Oh,
his compost, because most regenerative
wow.
farmers or organic farmers are really good at growing compost. And then you get some of his or their compost onto your property, and you'll see how it reacts on your plants. And then I would also suggest that you start doing your own compost. Again, there's certain techniques of like how you do it. There's easy ways, and it takes a little longer time. Or if you want to speed up the process, you can do it faster. But then you have to. It takes more time. So it all comes down to like, yeah, soil health is key,
Mm-hmm.
just like our gut health is key for our personal
Yeah.
health. And
Like a base.
yeah, exactly. And then the way to do it is like, for us, you could say it's getting the probiotics, but in nature or in your garden, it's getting the compost. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and put, even for you, putting your hands in that compost, it's gonna improve your health.
Ooh,
Uh,
wow.
so it's good to get your hands dirty on some high quality compost.
Wow, that's amazing. So really a big answer to a lot of the questions is the regenerative farming. So to go somewhere, and I guess is that a couple of my questions I had was talking about our reliance on kind of like the industrialized food production and not really getting, I guess, seasonal or locally produced, which I've learned from talking to other experts in completely different topics. Like I had a expert on menopause, and she was talking about how eating foods that are grown locally can be a huge benefit for our hormone health and stuff. And it was just something I had never connected at all. So, would you say a good answer to those issues is the going to the regenerative farmer and saying, "I'd like to buy my vegetables here"?
Exactly. Like locally is
Wow.
already definitely a better option because of the food miles. Because they like example on spinach. When you buy spinach in the supermarket, it depends on where you are in the world, but it'll be harvested 3 days to 2 weeks before. And
Wow.
as it turns out, like most of the minerals and the nutrients and all the good stuff that is in spinach, it's already out of the plant in the first day
Wow.
after
No
harvesting.
way.
So you're like only eating spinach that is maybe has 10% of its original qualities.
That's
So
shocking.
the more local you can get, the better. Or even if you can do it in your own backyard garden, and
Yeah.
you just cut it and you cook it immediately, you'll have all of it. So it like the spinach is obviously the extreme because it dries out quickly.
Yeah.
So other things like potatoes obviously last way longer and they hold on to their
Mm.
minerals way longer. So local is definitely better, but I would say part of that is definitely the regenerative organic movement.
I once heard that every onion we get is like a year old. I don't know if that's true, but I had a that shocking fact. And now I notice when I go to the grocery store, I always see the onions and they're always so cold. I'm like, these were frozen not long ago. These were recently frozen, then they brought them out. So that's probably true with a lot of vegetables that we don't even think about. Like, when was this actually
Yeah,
harvested?
yeah,
Wow, I didn't know it lost so much of its kind of nutrient density in that space of time. That's actually really important to
yeah.
consider when you're kind of making those
And
choices.
then
That's really
yeah,
illuminating. I appreciate that.
it's just it's so astonishing actually. And then even if you look at not to speak badly of industrial farmers because they're like forced into that system.
Mm,
But
absolutely.
the produce that's farmed or industrially, so with a lot of chemical input and focusing more on having huge quantities rather than quality, they're now starting to find research for it. Just to give an example, that there's oranges that are being produced industrially that don't have any vitamin C. So you'd go to the
No.
supermarket, buy like 10 oranges, and they're dirt cheap. Like some of the oranges that
Yeah.
are industrial are so cheap, it's hard to imagine how a farmer can even make a living out of it. And that's often the problem of the industrial system, that the farmers don't make any money. But that orange doesn't have any vitamin C, and it's like, why would you buy oranges that don't have vitamin C? And then if there's an orange that's produced regeneratively, and the farmer has put a lot of effort in making the soil healthy, having all the good stuff for the tree to grow very well, then it's going to be full of vitamin C. And also that industrial produced orange might cost like even if that industrial orange costs like 10 times less than the regenerative produced one.
What's the point if it doesn't have
Exactly.
the
It
ingredients?
could,
Yeah, the factors that you're looking for.
exactly.
Wow, that is crazy. I have an orange every day and now I'm like, is there even any vitamin C in
Yeah.
it?
It's mostly
Oh
sugar,
no.
honestly.
Oh my
And
gosh.
not to say, because there's another misconception, we're trying to attack sugar as being something bad for us.
Mm,
But and it's the white sugar that's bad for us. Fruit sugar is good for us. But then
But
obviously,
fruit sugar has risen, hasn't it? Like an apple, I had a guest that told me that an apple 20 years ago had 4 grams of sugar and now it has 20,
yes,
and there's no getting away from that. That's scary.
that could be.
How does that happen?
Well, yeah, it's selection. So they select
Wow.
breeds that have more sugar because your taste buds like that more, and it's more addictive. So, um, but it doesn't have
That's
to
kind of
be.
fucked up.
Yeah. So really going out
Oh my
finding
gosh.
regenerative farmers, or it'll take some time. We're seeing some movement here in in the supermarkets in Europe. They're starting to do more efforts to put that food out there, but it's still early stage. And also on
Yeah.
our personal on our farm, we do this farm to table events. People come to the farm. We have cows that are grazed regeneratively in nature reserves, so the quality of the meat is just like from a whole different world. And I'm actually super excited about America now. Well, I don't want to get political, but with
Hmm.
your new president elect Trump coming up soon, I don't know when the podcast will be released, but he'll probably be president already. That
Hmm.
he's actually taken some of the best regenerative farmers in the world, in the world, or at least in America, to become part of the USDA, of the Agricultural Administration. So
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't actually know that. That's really good
yes,
news.
that's actually with
Wow.
Bobby Kennedy, RFK. Is it
Oh,
Bobby Kennedy?
yes.
No, RFK.
Oh,
That has put together all these. He's well connected with regenerative farmers in America, and there's a couple of very inspiring farmers in America that are doing an excellent job at producing high quality food that have been put in the background. They like they didn't get all
yeah.
the attention that they should need, and it's going to shift fast. I think I'm
It
very
needs
hopeful.
to. It absolutely needs to. I know that they are definitely taking a stance against the seed oils because seed oils have taken over everything over here.
Oh yeah.
But I mean that's a whole nother
Oh
episode
yeah.
anyway.
Do you know the story of
Uh,
seed of canola oil?
I'm a little bit research on seed oils myself because I get affected by them. I don't like them at all. But go please for
Yeah.
our
So
listeners, tell us.
canola, it stands for Canada Oil. And what happened in the Second World War? The American um, government needed a lubricant for all the war, like all the navy ships. A
Okay.
certain oil that would lubricate the machines and that can stand water because they're on the ocean. And this canola oil was perfect for it because it still keeps the engines running, and it can
Okay.
handle water. So they asked Canada to grow all of the seed oil for that because they had a good condition in their soil, and the climate is like colder, so it was perfect to grow it there. And so Canada completely changed their farming industry. The whole infrastructure was focused on growing that. And then it was already deep into the Second World War.
Hmm.
World War is over. They don't need as much navy ships all over the world. America says to Canada, "I'm very thankful that you started growing all this seed oil, but we don't need it anymore because we're
Okay.
going to have less navy ships or something changed." And yeah, obviously the Second World War ended, and then Canada was like, "Oh shit, we have all these farmers that are growing this oil now. What can we do with it? Oh, we'll start doing some experiments and see if people can eat it and we can use it. It's like a good oil." They started doing tests, but the pure oil, and people got really sick and actually died from it because it's
Oh my
poisonous.
gosh. Wow.
And
Yeah.
then they're like, "Oh shit, that doesn't work. Oh, you know what? We'll just change it a little bit chemically in a lab until it doesn't kill you."
Oh, great. That's all we
So
that's the
that's the
stats. The
story of
bar is on the floor, isn't
canola
it?
oil. They started changing it in a certain way chemically, so you don't die from it immediately. But it's never really meant for human consumption.
No, absolutely. I realized when I came to America, I love the movie theater. I'm really into movies. That's my thing.
Oh, nice.
And I go to the movie theater a lot and I would get the popcorn. And here in America, you get your popcorn and it has a little, you can do the butter yourself.
Mm,
So you go over to a little station and you press a button and the butter comes out and you can put like as much butter as you want in your popcorn. And coming from Ireland, you get butter popcorn, but it was melted real butter,
yeah, yeah.
cows from cows or whatever. But this pure seed oil.
Yeah.
So I did not knowing that, loaded it up, and I like the tummy ache of all tummy
Oh
aches
yeah.
for hours after the movie theater because it was just a bucket of seed oil. That's all it was. It was pure oil, no butter at all in it. So that's when I realized that, like, not only maybe it's not even a me thing. I think maybe everybody is just simply intolerant to it because it's not for human
No.
consumption pretty much. Wow. That is
But
crazy.
the
Well, it's good to
cheapest.
hear that there is a shift happening in that as it needs to be. That's actually a good thing anyway.
Yeah,
Hey
it is.
everyone, Chelsea here. I would love to take a moment to introduce you to our app, Yoga Plus. You will gain access to an incredible collection of videos led by top instructors in yoga, fitness, nutrition, and so much more. Download our Yoga Plus app today and get a free 14-day trial.